the phone to Steve, and she got on another line to call her mother. And the 911 operator asked Steve, among other things, if he'd searched the house for Sabrina. And Steve admitted that he hadn't, so he told William to go search the house.
That's the 8-year-old son.
That is the son, yeah. And, of course, William did not find Sabrina anywhere. And I'm sure that the house was thoroughly searched again after the police got there, too.
You know, the thing with Steve is, apparently being a Steve, I can interpret him.
Yeah.
But no, the thing is, he has a different way of phrasing his sentences and putting things, and I think that's one of the things that has not served him well, because when the operator asked him, have you searched the house, he says no, and then you can hear him talking to him. He says, search the house, I think it's something like turn over every pillow in case she got out of her crib, which there is no possible way she could have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people are like, why would you say that?
That's a strange thing to say, yeah.
It really is, except I get it, because I know people who just voice, do this even though I know it can't possibly have happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
maybe he was a little exasperated with the 911 operator. Maybe.
Well,
I think the guy's got Asperger's, to be honest with you.
It could be.
Here's something I will say is that, somebody who's raised 2 children, right, and this is his 3rd, he's probably in kind of a panic, and it's totally reasonable to believe that, within a couple months of 5 months, kids are escaping from their crib, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's totally reasonable to assume that he was like, well, crap, maybe she figured it out. I don't know. Maybe she figured it out. Maybe he's remembering his other kids were total escape artists. And it's just...
Yeah, he's and by the way, I don't want to sound like I was bashing when I said he sounds like he has Asperger's. He's very mechanical in the way that he talks and he acts. He's very light on the emotional side, and that's why it sounded so weird. But you're right, he could have thought it that way, or he could have thought, there's no freaking way, but I'm just going to do this to satisfy this woman on the phone so she'll get the damn cops here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been it.
Yeah.
But I think by that time they already had cops on the way anyhow.
Yeah, they were. I'm sure they were en route.
Yeah. Anyway, after his call ended, he went next door because his neighbor Scott Middleton was a former Tampa police officer, and so he thought for some reason or another that Middleton maybe should come over and look at the crime scene or
ask for help,
or maybe just get good advice from him or whatever. And Middleton said there was something odd about the Eisenbergs. He said, and I quote, "There was absolutely no emotion with Steve and Marlene, like nothing had happened. They weren't broken up, no tears being shed," unquote. So obviously he thought there was something hinky going on here.
I feel like that's contrary to other things I've seen, but okay.
Yeah. But I do think that Steve, even on their TV appearance the day of, he was pretty emotionless. But that, again, people react in different ways. And
thank you.
And frankly, you're not required to show any particular emotion or not. It's not,
It's not as if grief requires a specific response. There is no specified response to panic and grief.
I know also they've come under some fire, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, that they, in months after, were seen smiling. And people are like, obviously they killed.
Actually, that happened the day of.
The day of. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. Sorry.
But
my timelines are a little off, but okay.
I don't know. If people do have their own strange reactions.
There's an amazing amount of pressure for these people, and I don't mean public pressure. I just mean emotional pressure, and I think that they react in a way that most people don't. But I don't think that that's indicative of guilt. But I'm already getting ahead. I apologize.
Yeah. It could go either way, really.
It can.
Yeah. They may be guilty of sin, and maybe not. We'll find out.
All right, so they go talk to the neighbor Middleton.
Yeah, and so this whole thing, the emotion thing and everything, was kind of the beginning of their troubles that they had with the law. When the county sheriff's deputies started showing up, the press was right behind them. They started searching the neighborhood along with the house. They started questioning Steve and Marlene. And in cases like this, of course, usually the parents are the culprits.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah, and so naturally the cops, were suspicious from the very beginning. One thing that struck the cops about their home was just how chaotic and messy it was, which to them signified maybe neglect. I'm not so sure. My house is kind of messy too, so I'm not.
And you don't have two
Three
children
kids.
that are under the age of 10 and a child that is only 5 months old.
You also didn't just ask an 8-year-old to literally turn over every single pillow
There's that.
in the house.
There's
that kid
too.
might have been amazingly efficient.
That's
Yeah,
very
8-year-olds
true.
usually are pretty good at tearing things apart.
Yeah, well, young William probably actually had a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another problem the investigators had with these two is that Marlene told the first sheriff's deputies who arrived on the scene that she'd been woken up by the fish tank. Remember I mentioned that?
Right.
The noisy filter?
Which, if you've ever had a fish tank filter that was going south, they're freaking
Yeah,
noisy.
they're real
yeah,
loud.
Yeah, I've never had a fish tank, but I'll take your word for it.
I'll get you one.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But then a few hours later, she told she apparently had some sort of wake-up function.
Oh, I've had those, yeah.
Yeah, and so that obviously raised a red flag for the police. But, there wasn't enough to run them downtown quite yet. They did suggest that they go on television and plead for Sabrina's kidnappers to return her. And they did videotape something that aired, I think, that afternoon or evening. And I've seen that tape. Have you
I
guys
have
seen
too.
the tape? Yeah. You guys have any opinions on the tape? Or do you want to talk about that later in theories?
Oh, we can talk about it now.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts, Devin?
Well, I feel like we should a little bit describe it, right? I mean,
Okay, so it is all of the news cameras are outside of the house, and a cop walks out, and there's a police car backed into the driveway, unmarked police car backed into the driveway, and the cop walks over to the driver's side and gets in rather stone-faced, doesn't seem to have a whole lot of emotion, and Steve and Marlene follow behind, and they split so that one goes to one side and one goes to the other for the passenger's door, and just as they're starting to split, they both simultaneously break into a rather large smile.
Yeah.
That's the whole scene,
At
and then
each other.
get into the car
Yeah.
at each
okay.
other.
at each other,
Right.
and possibly somebody else. Because you know the situation that was going on.
Yeah, and so...
I mean, well,
actually, I was...
the background of the situation, what happened, they say happened preceding the smile, I guess.
Well, I think he was saying that one of the detectives cracked a joke or something like that. But,
Yeah.
Which is kind of if a guy cuts a joke or breaks a joke, it's kind of understandable in a situation like that, which is nothing but stress. Because but that's not. No, there's more than one time where they were on camera with a smile.
And you were talking about the other one, right?
The other one where they went on TV that
Yeah, I
very
haven't seen this
evening,
one.
yeah, to plead for the kidnapper or whoever it was who'd taken Sabrina to bring her back and yada yada. And Steve is sitting there just stone-faced the whole time.
As he
kinda looking
typically
down.
is.
Yeah, as he usually kind of is. And she is being kind of tearful. To me, there was something about her grief that seemed a little off.
Susan Shepard? Is that what you're
Shepard.
referencing?
No,
Okay.
not Susan Shepard.
Susan Shepard was the woman who 3 years prior had made a claim that someone had stolen her car with their children.
I thought that was Susan Smith.
Or Susan Smith, thank you. I always do that. I don't know why I always want to call her Shepard, but she's the one who then was eventually discovered to have killed her children herself.
Yeah, and that probably colored a lot of people's thinking in this case.
Well, if you watch the two videos side by side, they're very similar. It's scary. I mean, it's just grief. Again, it's grief, but they're very similar.
Yeah, and Marlene's acting, I didn't think was really up to snuff. She didn't strike me as entirely convincing. So, and there's another thing that happened on the first day, the morning of. The police, of course, didn't really think it was a kidnapper at all, but it could have been possibly. So they asked permission to put a tap on their home phone in case a kidnapper called in with ransom demands. And
So this is before. So we're sticking with the original timeline. We jumped ahead with the TV
we're sort of
bits.
bouncing around the timeline of
Trying not to.
of that day. These are all things that happened on that day. But the request to put the tap on the phone happened earlier in the day. Before I think they left the house, and there was a whole smile thing that was on like almost right away. And Steve did give them permission to do that. But
So he knew there was a tap on the phone.
yeah, either that or he gave him permission and promptly forgot about it. I don't know, but he knew there was a tap on the phone. Another thing that struck the cops as odd was that the Eisenbergs had left their garage door open overnight, although apparently that's a mistake they had made before, according to neighbors.
Apparently, they were notorious for leaving their doors open.
Yeah, and
They also had kids.
yeah, and they left the door from the garage to the house unlocked, which seems like you would lock. I would if I lived there, even if I didn't close the garage door, I would lock that door. But
Yeah,
You know?
kids come in and out of places
But
all the
also
time. That's the
20
hard
years
part.
ago in like what I understand to have been a relatively safe suburb.
Yeah, pretty quiet suburb of Tampa. Maybe it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And growing up, we had doors that were left unlocked, not at night usually, but
But it was a lucky break for the intruder anyway. That's one way to look at it. Certainly the way the cops saw it. The intruder somehow made his way into the house and found Sabrina and got away without waking anybody up. Although that probably wouldn't be that hard.
One thing that I don't see mentioned in your stuff here is the fact that people believe that she was taken and not waking up because of the fact that her blanket was gone. It's her, what is the crib blanket? Is that what it's called?
yeah.
Yeah, and because it's believed that she was wrapped up in that to keep her warm and swaddled and quiet.
Yeah, and so she probably didn't wake up. But even if she had woken up, the parents might not have woken up right away.
Contrary to my belief, apparently babies don't instantly wake up in a scream, so it's entirely possible.
Well, even when they do, sometimes it takes a while. If you
The build-up.
Yeah, well, or if you have been listening to a baby cry at night. If you're sleep training them, for instance, 5 months is about when people start sleep training babies.
Is that when
you let them cry it out.
Oh, yeah.
They wake up and they cry. You let them cry for
Even if they
5
go
minutes.
Vesuvius on you, you let them go.
And usually that's how they learn how to self-soothe and go put themselves back to sleep at some point.
I see.
So, they may have just been used to it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Although you would assume that you could tell that it was moving.
Yeah,
But maybe not. I don't know.
That baby is throwing her voice.
It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I know.
Getting further and further away.
By the way, I want to point out something that I find very funny in a lot of those spots where you see the story listed. Is everybody says Sabrina and her crib blanket are missing, and yet nobody has put out an APB on that crib blanket. Like nobody is looking for the crib. It's just made out. It's such a funny way when it's written.
Yeah, but the blanket is written, and they would like it back. Even if you want to keep the baby, we want the blanket back. We might
They have pictures of the blanket.
Yeah, we miss that blanket.
Preferably with a baby in it.
Yeah, probably. But of course, the odd thing that really raised yet another big flag is the dog didn't bark. Yeah.
Not a big flag to me.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who you talk to. And the family said that Brownie was a real quiet dog and didn't bark at people ever. But then again, their neighbor, Scott Middleton, remember him, the ex-cop, he said that Brownie barked all the time and barked at everybody.
The thing is that I watched a piece of footage where the camera crew just walked in the house. And Brownie's just like, hi, how you doing? How you doing? You gonna pet me? Typical dumb house dog behavior. Not a peep came out.
Yeah, so it could be. We'll talk about it in theories, too. Maybe the kidnapper was somebody that Brownie knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total stranger's one thing.
Brownie who did it.
Yeah.
It was the ex-cop who did it.
Frickin' dog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like the ex-cop theory. Yeah. So the Eisenbergs. I should have mentioned some other physical evidence too. By the way, I forgot about this. There was kind of a footprint.
There's a handprint somewhere, a partial handprint, wasn't there?
There were some fingerprints. They had a sliding
That's
back door, and then there had some fingerprints on it. And then the crib itself, there was one stray blonde hair, and everybody in the family had dark hair. Although that could be explained maybe if they just had a visitor with blonde hair to come by and visit the baby. But they had that, and then there was apparently a footprint on what's that little ruffled thing that goes around the base of the crib, that blanket thingy that hangs down.
Crib skirt?
Okay, that sounds good enough.
I was going to say it's a skirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a footprint on that. Although it's hard to see how you can get a footprint on that.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the physical evidence.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's weird. Why they would come in through the front, through the garage, and then exit through the slider in the back, and then apparently scent dogs followed the scent out to the back fence. So maybe somebody came in through the front. You would think they would come in from the front and then exit by the front.
Yeah.
But
in and out.
Maybe if it was a sort of a team effort, maybe somebody took Sabrina, carried her out to the back fence, and handed her over the fence.
That doesn't make any sense, Joe.
Well, climbing over a fence with a baby that makes
doesn't
even
make
less
any
sense.
sense.
No, it makes even less sense.
That is an instant way to wake up a baby.
Yeah.
Is to jostle them over a fence.
Yeah, but I also don't. Was the skirt like hanging down on the ground?
Maybe it had come partially detached and it was sort of laying on the ground partially.
That'd be the only way that I could imagine a footprint getting on there.
Yeah, that's. I know that kind of struck me as funny too.
Yeah.
But anyway, it wasn't evidence that they could ever usefully use. None of it was, and you know, it's another piece of evidence, which again doesn't really give us much, is that one of the next door neighbors was out walking his dog about 1 a.m. and the dog barked, and then he heard the sound of a baby crying in the woods, off behind their houses.
Yeah.
And so
red herring right there. I'm going to call that.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah. So it was probably somebody with just playing the baby app on their iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the
20 years
iPhone
ago.
was totally around. But no, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's other people who have babies.
Oh yeah.
So it's not
Well, it doesn't really.
ironclad.
It doesn't really tell us anything useful as far as solving our mystery here
Yeah.
either. No. So, but that's it. I just didn't want to leave out all those little cogent details.
Oh yeah, well, you see them battered around enough.
Back to our investigation, the Eisenbergs were cooperative, and they both took lie detector tests, I think that very day. Steve and Marlene claimed the tests were inconclusive, which happens quite often anyway.
Fairly regularly.
Yeah, the polygraphs are not 100%. But the Sheriff's Department leaked information that some of Marlene's answers were deceptive. That's about it. Other than that, you know, there have been subsequent lie detector tests that, you know, the Sheriff's Department won't release the results, but the Eisenbergs claim they passed. But the Sheriff's Department's not saying anything. Yeah, apparently they were in an unincorporated part of the county that didn't have its own police force. That's why it's the sheriff's, by the way, if you're wondering this. Anyway, Steve's brother, as it happens, his name was Dave. He is a lawyer, and he advised them to get a lawyer from the start. But they waited 2 days before they hired one. A guy named Barry Cohen, and you'll find him on the internet.
All over the internet.
Oh yeah.
They never appear without Barry Cohen.
Oh yeah, and he's one of those guys too, and he's you know, good at publicizing himself a little bit, I think. You know?
Well, all of the videos that I found that were of any substance about this case were on his YouTube channel.
I know. Yeah.
So that tells you something.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, but he's got some useful videos out there. If you do a Google on Barry Cohen Eisenberg,
and then just mine his YouTube channel.
Yeah, you'll find all kinds of good stuff out there. On the advice of Barry Cohen, the Eisenbergs stopped cooperating with the investigation. And one of the things that the Eisenbergs have said all along is that the police never did anything but look for a body and try to pin the crime on Steve and Marlene. Yeah, and the Eisenbergs think that the police never really seriously considered the possibility that somebody stole Sabrina, and that's one of their grievances against them.
I got to tell you that I think I know why that is.
Yeah, why?
If you ever look at early news footage or later news footage that's, we're going to look back at the case, it's always divers in ponds and guys going in the roadside ditches, because that's what makes footage, not cops walking through yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, they were going around, like, you know, going door to door and searching yards, and as you say, there were all these rows of divers going into these ponds side by side so they could totally cover it and cover the bottom of the pond.
Because you got to think of the size of a baby. They're rather small. At 5 months, it's going to be a little kid. It would be easy for one person swimming around in a murky environment to miss.
Oh, hell
Totally
yeah.
miss it.
Yeah, so they did do a massive search. The police searched radius around the house, and that's everything. And plus, Steve was a local real estate agent. I don't know if I'd mentioned that.
No, not yet.
No, sorry about that. That's what he was doing for a living at the time. And apparently he had just recently taken part in the sale of a house. And I heard that the police went to that place and dug up the entire yard.
Well, that would lead you to believe that they were pretty sure you had killed your child.
Yeah, wouldn't you think? Yeah. I think so.
I would be pissed if that was the house that I had just bought.
Right?
Yeah,
Me too.
I know. But, you know, they probably just slapped a little warrant on him and just said, you know, hey, you don't need to thank us. Now you're free to just re-landscape the whole thing.
We've started the process for you.
Yeah,
no pillow unturned.
Yeah. But contrary to what the Eisenbergs say, the police did do more than look for a body, and they followed up on thousands of leads, which were mostly sightings of Sabrina, which all turned out to be false.
Sure.
But the case was getting
Not
national.
unusual.
Yeah, it was getting national attention, and her picture was all over the place. And, let's face it, babies tend to not be distinctive. They tend to all look alike. Yeah, and so I'm not surprised that lots of people saw Sabrina. I mean, Sabrina, what was unique about her? She had big dark eyes and a kind of a mop of dark hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was distinctive about her. So, but still, I'm sure in America at that time there were still plenty of babies that answered
There were
that description.
thousands of babies who looked generally like that.
Yeah, and it's also not so hard to kind of cover a baby up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Nobody is going to be like, oh, why do you have your baby all wrapped up like that?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, it's not that hard to
Excuse me, ma'am. Let me see your baby's face.
Yeah, you could dye. You can bleach your hair. Make her
Where's your
blonde.
baby's
Little
ID?
Yeah.
I mean, little hats are fine.
And little bonnets. Yeah.
Or she looks like a baby. I don't know. There's nothing big and distinct about her.
Yeah, but the most famous sighting was, of course, Paloma Unknown.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys want to talk about Paloma Unknown.
Well, just the basics.
Why
It's
not?
real quick basics. She's kind of a little mystery on her own. She was apparently brought across the U.S.-Mexico border by an unnamed teenager who gave her to a woman named Molly Garza, who didn't know what to do with her. So she gave her to a nurse that she knew, and the nurse gave Paloma Unknown to her sister, who lived in Pontiac, Illinois, where I don't know, she might still live there today. Nobody knows who she is or where she's from. The mother just handed the kid over to Molly. And
There's no birth certificate that can be tracked down.
Yeah, not at all. But she kind of, I'm sure you've seen pictures of her. She kind of looks like Sabrina.
Kind of.
I wouldn't say identical, but she kind of looks like her. About the same age and everything. And so eventually somebody put two and two together, and they suggested they run a DNA test, and the DNA test came back negative. So Paloma is still unknown.
So this is a good point to bring something up about the Eisenbergs, which is either their lawyer is a good publicist or they've got somebody else working with them, because it's about this time that they went on the Geraldo show.
Oh yeah, they went on Larry King, they went on Geraldo.
And every time, like they went on around this time, and because apparently the process of identifying this child wasn't going as fast as they wanted it, and they used their publicity as a tool to speed that process up, which it worked, but they've done this several times for several possible leads. And so that's another thing that I know is kind of a black eye on their innocence, because of the fact that people are like, why do you keep doing that?
Uh-huh.
And then never mind that, it's years later and they're on TV and they're just stone-faced, but I don't know who was telling them to do these things, but it doesn't seem like it was a good idea.
Now, if I were them, I would be staying out of the public eye as much as possible, personally.
As most parents of missing children do.
Yeah. Another thing that somebody set up a fund for, find Sabrina or whatever, and apparently I heard a story that they had used some of the funds from that to retire some credit card debt. Have you not heard that story?
I vaguely remember that.
I've seen it in a few news articles, and I'm gonna stress that right here that I've seen it in a few places, but this is the press, so I don't know that it's absolutely true. It might not be.
Well, the stupid thing about that is that maybe it's possible that is debt that they incurred while searching for their daughter and paying for their card.
No, it's very true. Yeah, and so that's a possibility I thought of too.
So okay, so Paloma Unknown, not Sabrina.
Yep, turns out not to be. So disappointment.
So
did I mention the police were kind of convinced that Steve and Marlene had murdered her or done something?
They were involved.
Yeah.
Something skullduggerous.
You had not, but
yeah. Well, yeah. But they still couldn't find a lick of evidence, and so actually I shouldn't say that. They couldn't find much in the way of evidence.
Substantive.
Yeah, nothing that they could hang them with. About 2 months after Sabrina disappeared, a federal grand jury was convened to look into the case, and the Eisenbergs were summoned. But on the advice of counsel, that's Barry Cohen, they refused and they pled the Fifth Amendment. For our foreign listeners, now you probably know this anyway, but the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees your right not to be forced to testify against yourself. So when you plead the Fifth, essentially you're saying you're refusing to testify because if you did testify, you would incriminate yourself.
You might.
Yeah.
You might incriminate yourself.
Yeah.
It's not would, it's might.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so that's your right.
But it's not. It doesn't look good.
It's bad optics. Yeah, but actually, but seriously, I think any good defense lawyer would tell his clients in their position, since the police were really jonesing for him. I think any good defense yeah, would totally tell him.
I was waiting because that's exactly where I was going to go. Is
Right.
that if they have brought a case against them like this, they are obviously digging for something.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah.
So that's why I say might.
So yeah, that's why I say
Right.
I'm not holding that against them at all. But
No,
to
me
some people, once again, bad optics.
Yep.
Yeah. Police, frustrated in their investigation, got a warrant, and
Because they couldn't prove any other way, so
They
let's do
couldn't-
something else.
yeah, there was even some questionable behavior in the evidence they used to get their warrant.
Yeah.
But I guess their hearts were in the right place, and so they planted bugs in their kitchen and bedroom in their house.
Listening devices.
Yeah, they listened in on them for almost 3 months, from 7 a.m. to midnight every day. And I heard they recorded as many as 2,600 separate conversations.
In 3 months in a house with 2 adults and 2 children, that seems
sounds
like a
right.
small number.
Yeah, well, I mean, you never know. Probably a lot of them were like, in rooms other than the kitchen and the bedroom.
True.
Or out in the yard or God knows where.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff about these recordings.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
This is not a shining moment for the police.
It is not.
Yeah, apparently the something in their execution it was kind of a big fail, but we'll talk about that later.
Not too much
But
later, but soon.
Yeah, they're trying to build their case. So in May 1999, this is a year and a half later, they weren't doing so well financially. I guess the police were still
The Eisenbergs?
Yeah, and I guess the police were still busily trying to transcribe those tapes because obviously the tapes were like late '97 and early '98. And so here it is, like kind of early to mid 1999. They still haven't
God, that
finished.
just seems like a really low freaking priority.
Mm-hmm.
To transcribe those tapes, if you did 3 months worth of tapes, and then it takes you over a year to go through them.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the legal process here too is.
That's a good
putting
point.
together an indictment and everything like that.
No,
I'm not
you
sure.
make
It
a
might
very valid
take a long
point. I
time,
take
too.
it back.
Yeah, but I would say transcribing 3 months worth of tapes would take you a while.
It takes a really long time.
Yeah.
Well, but I
Especially, again, because of the quality of the...
But
Yeah, the
I'm
qualities,
guessing that a lot of it was dead air time.
Yeah.
So you listen to it at 2 times speed.
Mm-hmm.
When it's she always takes the kids to school at 8:30, and then she's gone till 9:15 when she shows back up with her Starbucks.
Well, I mean,
so we zip ahead.
There are such things as voice-activated microphones too, so that's one way around that.
Okay,
So they might have done that, too.
If they use that would make more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know, or they could use like situation where they have a screen like the one right over here that's on our sound recording system where they can just like look at the tape and just sort of see where the waves pick up and just we'll zip to that part and listen.
Yeah,
to
but
it.
we all know how fallible that is.
Well, that's true, and of course it was 1998 also, and they didn't have whizzy stuff like this.
Okay, so they record a bunch of conversations.
Yeah, and of course, and as I said, the Eisenbergs were not doing well financially, and so they sold the house in Valrico and moved to Bethesda, Maryland, which was where actually Steve's childhood home was. And his parents still owned the house, and so since they were having a hard time financially, his parents let them stay there.
That was nice of them.
Understandable,
Very nice of them. Yeah. Meantime, of course, as I said, the police and the FBI, because did I mention that the kidnapping was suspected? That brings
The FBI at least touches base on every potential abduction. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it's a federal crime. I think that happened after the Lindbergh kidnapping.
Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
think
And
that's
so,
what
yeah,
was.
it doesn't. Yeah, of course the FBI is involved.
Yeah, and so the FBI and I think some other police agencies also. But they're putting together their case, and obviously they had a pretty good idea of what had happened to Sabrina. There had been some skullduggery, as I said earlier. So 4 months after the move to Bethesda, the FBI pays Marlene a call one day. They gave her a friendly knock on the front door with a battering ram, and came busting into the house, and they arrested her. Which, by the way, I think was a little excessive.
Yeah, I gotta say,
I-
sending the SWAT team to that house a bit much.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, especially a house with a couple of kids in it. I don't know if the kids were home at the time or not, but still, it just seems kind of outrageous to me.
Well, they showed up at 9:15 after she got back with her Starbucks.
Yeah, but the battering ram dudes, really? I mean,
Great, I get to buy a new door.
yeah. Across town, wherever Steve was, I guess he was working, they were arresting him, and they were charged with obstructing the investigation and lying to the police. They were not charged with murder.
We were talking about the fact that the family was having financial troubles. Here's a reason why. The cops are showing up at his job constantly.
That doesn't help,
and his employer is like, I don't really want the cops around my place of business all the time. Oh, look, the SWAT team rolled into the real estate office and hauled you away in cuffs. No wonder the guy's got problems.
Well, I mean, think about the whole incident where they dug up that guy's yard.
Yeah.
What's that going to do for your business?
Yeah, I think he lost his commission on that sale.
I don't know if he did or not, but I'm sure that scared a lot of people away.
Yeah.
So
they haul him away.
Yeah, and plus just all the bad publicity anyway, I'm sure would be